In the Grand Hall, Emperor Wen was urgently summoning all the ministers to discuss countermeasures regarding Bei Huan's request for grain. At the moment, Emperor Wen was really troubled. Giving grain to Bei Huan was tantamount to supporting Daqian's enemy, but if no grain was provided, Bei Huan, unable to survive the approaching winter, would surely march south to plunder. At that time, the north, which had just recuperated for a few years, would surely be plunged into war again. Daqian had just gone through the case of the Crown Prince's rebellion, and the internal situation was extremely unstable. Facing Bei Huan at this time, the chance of winning was too slim. Even if they won, it was likely to be a Pyrrhic victory, while Emperor Wen was in a dilemma. The war faction and the peace faction were also arguing fiercely. However, the peace faction clearly had the upper hand. Emperor Wen was so irritated by the noise that he couldn't make up his mind. Just then, despite the blocking of the guards outside the hall, Consort Shu rushed in, crying, "Your Majesty, you must stand up for liar. Woo-woo, ahum." Emperor Wen coughed softly and gave Consort Shu a meaningful look. "I'm discussing important matters with the ministers. My dear concubine, please step back first. We can talk about other things later." Instead of stepping back, Consort Shu cried even louder, "Your Majesty." Yanzheng kicked Liar's vital part. There's a chance that Liar might not even be able to be a man anymore. Woo-woo. What? Emperor Wen's face changed drastically. Just as he was about to get angry, he suddenly calmed down. After a moment, Emperor Wen smiled and said, "My dear concubine, don't talk nonsense. I still know what kind of person the sixth prince is. He doesn't have the guts for this." Duke Jingguo, Zhu Shifu, also stepped forward and smiled. "Empress Consort Shu, His Majesty is busy with state affairs every day. Don't joke with him." The sixth prince is known for his kind and honest nature. How could he do such a thing? Describing him as kind and honest was just a euphemism. The sixth prince was timid and cowardly, a complete good-for-nothing. Consort Shu was slightly taken aback and then cried even louder. Emperor Wen didn't believe her words, and even her own brother didn't believe her. But what she said was absolutely true. Just then, a guard outside the hall reported, "Your Majesty, the sixth prince requests an audience." The sixth prince, Emperor Wen, was slightly surprised and immediately asked, "What does he want?" The guard lowered his head and replied somewhat guiltily. The sixth prince said that he kicked His Highness the third prince's vital part and came specifically to plead guilty. Hearing the guard's words, the faces of all the ministers twitched. Could it be true? That good-for-nothing sixth prince actually kicked the third prince's vital part? Emperor Wen was also shocked by the guard's words. His face changed again, and he sternly growled at the guard, "Bring this unfilial son to me right away." Soon, Yanzheng was brought into the hall. Yanzheng quietly sized up his so-called father sitting on the imperial throne. Not bad, although he was over 50 years old. He didn't look particularly old, different from what he knew about ancient times. The emperors of the Daqian dynasty would give themselves a posthumous title like honorific when they ascended the throne. His so-called father, Yanqi's honorific title was Emperor Wen, unfilial son. Emperor Wen stared at Yanzheng with blazing eyes. "Did you really kick your third brother's vital part, even now?" Emperor Wen still couldn't quite believe this fact. The sixth prince usually didn't even dare to speak loudly. How could he dare to hurt his elder brother like this today? Yes, Yanzheng nodded slightly. Upon getting the affirmative answer, Emperor Wen's face suddenly turned extremely ugly. "Unfilial son, how dare you treat your third brother like this?" Emperor Wen glared furiously and roared, "Do you know that what I least want to see is you brothers killing each other?" The frost on Zhu Shifu's face grew thicker. He bowed and said, "I think that the sixth prince showed no respect for his elder brother and seriously injured the third prince. This cannot be tolerated. I request that your Majesty demote the sixth prince to a commoner as a warning to others." He was Yunli's uncle. Yunli had suffered a great deal at Yanzheng's hands. How could he let Yunjung off? The sixth prince actually attacked the third prince so brutally. His crime is unpardonable. As soon as your majesty ascended the throne, you strictly prohibited the princes from killing each other. This precedent must not be set. I request that your majesty demote the sixth prince to a commoner as a warning to others. I second the motion. Zhu Shifu's words were immediately echoed by the faction of the third prince. Everyone pleaded with Emperor Wen to demote Yunjung to a commoner. Even some who didn't speak just watched coldly dot in the huge court hall. There wasn't a single person speaking up for Yunjung. Looking at these clowns, Yunjung secretly congratulated himself on his decision. What was the point of staying in the imperial capital if he didn't run away? Staying in the imperial capital would only lead to his death. Run away? He had to run away. Emperor Wen's gaze was cold and fierce. He stared at Yunjung with a frosty face. Unfilial son, why don't you speak? I allow you to speak and give you a chance to explain. Facing Emperor Wen's anger, Yunjung bowed and said, your son doesn't want to explain. And there's no need to explain. Anyway, it's a great taboo for your son to have kicked third brother like that. Your son pleads guilty. Hearing Yunjung's words, Zhu Shifu couldn't help but snort softly. Trash was still trash. He was useless even when given a chance. However, it was useless even if this trash was given a chance to explain. He was determined to make Emperor Wen demote this good-for-nothing prince to a commoner. Zhu Shifu pondered for a moment and then bowed again. Your Majesty, since the sixth prince has already pleaded guilty, please approve the minister's request and demote the sixth prince to a commoner. As a warning to others, I request that your Majesty demote the sixth prince to a commoner as a warning to others. The faction of the third prince pleaded in unison. Yunjung mentally noted down these bastards in his little book. Then he bowed to Emperor Wen again and said loudly, your son knows that he has committed a serious crime. Please bestow punishment upon your son. Father Emperor, bestow punishment? A cold glint flashed in Emperor Wen's eyes. Then tell me, what punishment do you deserve? Death penalty. Without hesitation, Yunjung bowed and said, I beg Father Emperor to bestow death upon your son. Boom, as Yunjung's words fell, the hall fell into complete silence to execute him. Yunjung actually took the initiative to ask Emperor Wen to execute him? Was his mind completely messed up? Everyone stared at Yunjung in a daze. No one had expected that Yunjung would ask for death right away. Even Zhu Shifu and Consort Shu, the brother and sister, were completely confused. Although Yunjung had no foundation or status, he was still a prince after all. In the Dacian dynasty, as long as a prince didn't rebel or commit extremely heinous crimes, it was almost impossible for him to be executed. Yunjung's kick to Yun Li's groin wasn't enough for Emperor Wen to execute him. Yunjung actually proposed a request that even they wouldn't dare to think of. Emperor Wen was also greatly shocked by Yunjung's words. After a long silence, Emperor Wen sternly asked, do you really want me to execute you? Yes. Yunjung nodded solemnly. Your son can only atone for his sins with death. Emperor Wen's heart twitched. He couldn't figure out why Yunjung was so determined to die. Although he didn't particularly like this son either. After all, he was his son. He couldn't be so scared that he would ask for death, right? Among all the civil and military officials in the court, who would dare to ask to be executed? After pondering for a moment, Emperor Wen sternly asked, is someone threatening you? As he spoke, Emperor Wen's gaze casually swept over Consort Shu. Consort Shu was shocked and loudly declared her innocence. She hadn't even had a chance to talk to Yunjung. How could she have threatened him? No? Yunjung shook his head. Then why are you so determined to die? Emperor Wen suddenly raised his voice. In an instant, all the civil and military officials in the court fell silent. Your son has committed a serious crime and should atone for his sins with death, Yunjung said with a sorrowful expression. Your son has no other requests. I just beg Father Emperor to agree to a small request of mine. Speak, Emperor Wen said with a dark face. Your son has been a good for nothing for so many years. I don't want to die a cowardly death either. Yeonjung put on a look of grief and indignation, gritted his teeth, and said, I beg Father Emperor to allow your son to go to the border. Your son is willing to hold a 3-foot-long sword and die heroically in battle. Died in battle? A cold glint flashed in Zhu Shifu's eyes. He understood. Yeonjung was trying to escape from the imperial capital. The 6th prince's courage is commendable, but I think it's inappropriate. Zhu Shifu immediately jumped out to oppose. After all, the 6th prince is a prince. If a prince of our dynasty dies on the battlefield, wouldn't it make those barbarians laugh at us, saying that there's no capable person in our mighty Dakian? He couldn't give Yeonjung a chance to escape from the imperial capital. Yunli had told him about the bloody letter. They had to get the bloody letter in their hands. Yeonjung shook his head. I can't agree with what Duke Jingguo said. Oh, Zhu Shifu looked up at Yeonjung. What's your opinion, 6th prince? Yeonjung straightened his back and said sonorously, the sons of common people are willing to fight to the death for our Dakian. As princes, we should set an example for the people of the world. However, since the founding of our dynasty, there has been no record of a prince dying on the battlefield. This is why our country has not been prosperous enough. If there is to be one, let it start with me, Yeonjung. Yeonjung's words were sonorous and forceful, constantly echoing in the grand hall. Hearing Yeonjung's words, many people felt a sense of heroism welling up in their hearts. A rare look of approval flashed in the eyes of several military generals, who had never had any contact with Yeonjung before. After a moment, they all started to speak. Your Majesty, I think that our dynasty may go to war with Baehuan at any time now. If His Highness the 6th Prince goes to the battlefield in person, it will surely greatly boost the morale of the army. Yes, Your Majesty, as a prince of the imperial family, His Highness the 6th Prince is determined to risk his life on the battlefield. How dare the men of our Dakian not fight with all their might? Please, Your Majesty, approve His Highness the 6th Prince's request to boost the morale of the army. With the words of these military generals, many voices of agreement also emerged in the courts, especially among those in the war factions. They didn't expect Yeonjung to kill many enemies on the battlefield, but Yeonjung's move could indeed greatly boost the morale of the army. For the North, which might go to war at any time, this was undoubtedly good news. Hearing everyone's words, Emperor Wen couldn't help, but nod slightly. After a moment, Emperor Wen's gaze fell on Yeonjung again. I'm very pleased that you have such a heart. I'll ask you one last time, do you really want to go to the border? Just as Yeonjung was about to speak, Zhu Shifu caused another problem. Your Majesty, I still think this matter is inappropriate. Zhu Shifu bowed again. Why is it inappropriate? Emperor Wen frowned and asked. Zhu Shifu said, His Highness the 6th Prince has commendable courage. But the situation on the battlefield changes rapidly. What if His Highness the 6th Prince is captured? Wouldn't that make our dynasty lose all faith? This